Hey everyone. We're going to have a talk here, I believe, with Lee Mudway and about the Ascension and higher consciousness talk, and providing that Lee can join here. So before we could do it, so hopefully now we can. And of course, Ascension and everything that is related to that. Currently, what I will say is that we are experiencing two definite, distinct timelines, of course, and one is the higher timeline, and where ones are developing and advancing forward in their skills and divine skills, and keeping themselves separated from the turmoil and the chaotic lower timeline, if you will. So having said this, during this, it's about at least a 2-month wait period for us on the higher timeline, where we float above, let's say, the despair and suffering of most of the world, while the world on that lower timeline, where the majority of the population is, they experience a lot of chaos, turmoil, uprising, and what have you. So, having said this, it has to play out this way. And, for one of the simple reasons is that it's all divinely orchestrated, and all of these need to come to a certain place of surrender at being exhausted with everything they're doing to try to survive, and to be just pressured to the point, again, where they say enough is enough, and that they choose the higher timeline and the mechanism for that. And the higher timeline is what we have is the divine plan, GPMS. And what's occurring, there's ones that don't even see that word, that written text, GPMS.world. They don't even know it exists. And it's because of their consciousness. And it's not to blame anyone, because we're going through these upward levels of it, and eventually and inevitably they will see it and come into line with it, and knowing that it's what for all to do. So hello, Corey, and everyone that is on here. So I'm just waiting for Lee to come. But having said this, it's the intricate detail of all of this ascension. It affects everything. Everything is connected. But one of the things for those that are spiritually advanced and developed in knowing what is going on, knowing, let's say, the full truth, or at least a lot more of it, it's difficult for those that just think everything is just the way it is and are with what status quo. But as we know from here, and it's not to diminish nor demean any, because we know the higher truth, and we've been placed here for this time, and at least to some degree, we know that what is occurring upon the planet is for the ascension, and to take the most of the human souls forward. And it can be tedious at times. I'm adding Lee now. I see you just come on, so we'll see if we can bring Lee here into the discussion. Having said this, Femke and I are... Hey, there's brother Lee. Lee, you're laying on your side, brother. Maybe you wish to sit upright.
Hang on. Is that better?
Oh, there, that's better. Yeah, you sat up in bed. Okay, that's
no,
good.
I'm not sat in bed. It's the phone sideways. Is that sideways for you, brother?
No, you're lucky yours works that way. I didn't try mine, but I was. But the other time, I think the live for me would only work if it's upright. But that's good. Yeah.
Okay, I'll get this. I'll get this sorted. Maybe I'll turn the camera off until I do. Can you hear me okay?
Oh, I can hear you fine. Yeah, and see you well as well. Yeah, everything looks good.
Ah, that'll do. We'll leave it as it is. Yeah, I have to excuse me. I've got both my ears a little bit blocked, upgrades or whatever it is. So every now and then I might shake my head a little bit, but it is what it is, brother.
Well, let's get into that. Femke and I, within the last 24 hours, experienced a huge upgrade. Last evening, I was floored, if you will, very dizzy and just knocked out that I had to sleep and cold and for about 3 hours. And Femke proceeded up the hill here today, and we're doing a lot of energetic work in this area, and she just got floored with her unable to move the legs, like the air was right thick and heavy, and just like pushing through it. But there was also a flare that come afterwards, but definite upgrades at least, yeah.
It's yeah. I don't know. There's another one which is a compression of the vertebrae in the rear to top of the neck, or base of the neck and the skull, almost like where the wings come out. But in that area, it feels like a block, and that's been there pressured for a wee while too. But these, again, with these ongoing things, they're consistent, they're constant, but they just appear differently. So the representation of the being knocked out, that happens regularly, but ones may not realize it. They just feel tired, but it's not tiredness, it's just time to lay down and going with that. So very relevant.
Yeah, exactly. Just as you were saying that, Lee, I could feel it down on my feminine left side, down in the back. I could physically actually feel what you were describing. And even today, our empathic abilities are becoming stronger and stronger. And when Femke come back from her walk, where she had become really dizzy, just with her outside sharing the details of her experience, as she began to say about her dizziness, then I pick it up telepathically, but the feeling, the empathy with it, and actually feeling it. And it just occurred now again with you.
Empathetic feeling, yeah, the energy of it rather than the experience of
Yes.
it. And I think that's, again, when mapping or looking at the collective consciousness right now, that's what we're talking to with a lot of this, what we will be talking to in this conversation, I assume. Let's see what happens, but is aligned to that empathy. So that energetic state is what we're going to be focusing on today in this one, is the collective consciousness empathy, or the empathy with the confusion. Let's call it that.
Yeah, indeed. I see others dizziness and heavy headaches as well, and so this is a commonality with these Ascension symptoms at this time. I see Laura put in she says, I am working in a mental health system that limits talking directly with ones I'm working with. Any suggestions would be greatly appreciated. What would you say to that, Lee?
Each must do. I'm not as tactful as you with these ones, brother. It's not moral. It's not virtuous. It's not the way of the future. It's not what ones know that it is a moral or virtuous pathway. Yeah, they are accepting or tolerating it. It's intolerable. It's not acceptable. It does not go forward. The sooner ones let go of all of that, the better. In non-acceptance without judgment. Just no, this can't be continued. But I'd love to hear your version of it, brother.
Yeah. Well, it's Laura's experience to see what is, as you're saying, morally wrong. And this is what it is. It's taken away the compassionate care element right out of it, and commercializing profit from pain, if you will, and the focus on the profit, which is again, it has disempowered ones from their value to the fullest extent worldwide. So this is a micro indicator of what has morally gone wrong on the planet, what is not moral.
Yeah.
So how deep it is plunged into being savage and even taken the humanness out of it. So it's gone beyond that on the lower timeline.
It's the exact. I was speaking with a brother yesterday about narcissism, and everybody's got their viewpoints on this word, their perspective on this word, and many have got attached values to it. But narcissism is not a word, a catch-all. It's a behavioral system from a place of lack within, and represents itself under an umbrella terminology of narcissism. It's a place of self-loathing that represents itself externally as a place of control and command. In many different ways, it's a lack of value within that is represented without. And what we are seeing is relatively the narcissistic behavior of the system that's been adopted by humanity, showing itself to be the control mechanism that is devoid of empathy and devoid of value. It's got no value within it. It's all about the dead, the non-living, the non-organic, the artificial. It's all about mechanisms of control on the external, which remove all of humaneness and humanity and morality and virtue from the actions, because there isn't any from a place of lack. So these value systems that we have within, that we are all, well, the human collective is all neutralizing to a place of benevolence, is what each is witnessing from without, from the system back. So what you said a bit earlier about she will see what she needs to see about the morality of the system, it's the collective consciousness is witnessing this to harmonize within the field of the collective consciousness. And same as the individual, when one must give up their own blame and shame and guilt and apathy and anger, they move past these states of lower value. They start to embody and act upon the higher values, the virtues and the honors and the integrity. The value is kept within. In these states of command and control, the value is placed outside negatively. And this is what each is doing to return their value, their integrity, is they're pulling back the values and negatives. They're not acting in those ways. They are not acceptant or tolerant of those lessers, the lesser morality. I'm not saying, just call it virtue, non-virtue, not right or wrong, just virtue and non-virtuous. As ones rise through the fear levels of the lower spectrum, they release and do no longer tolerate within their own field that which is no longer acceptable or non-virtuous. As this happens within each, then it is represented in the whole. Once it's no longer tolerated or accepted within your vessel, it's no longer accepted or tolerated out there, and it ceases to exist. So it's the release of these lower frequencies, the remembering of value, i.e. virtue, integrity, and the release of that which is not, as we move forward. So that was a little bit around that same thing, brother, based on intrinsic value and virtue.
Yeah. So we're reversing out. So, the cause of all these things, including the word narcissist, which I avoid using because it is a trap word. It's a judgmental. For the one to use it to describe another, then they actually become it as well to a degree. So there is that deception in it. So I say, no, take that out of the vocabulary. Nevertheless, it is an identity feature. And what we see with this great time of reversal, where we're rising back into grace, this was one of the extents that humanity has fallen out of grace to begin to take on that type of behavior, if you will, which is null and void of all empathy and compassion and love and manipulation, if you will, is what it is. But what I wish to say with this, Lee, is that, again, the actual individual that is a soul. So there are two narcissists, if you will. One is a genuine human soul that is going through their processes or have descended to the lowest of the ladder, whether they rise or not. But the other one is an actual soulless minion that's been placed with so many worldwide, and they can never rise. And what they are there to do is to disempower the other in any relationship and to maintain a control over them by making them think they're crazy or keeping them in a state of fear. So we have seen this happen. I know I have so many times during assisting ones with this ascension and being a counselor, if you will, that ones are in these relationships, even married, where they had a partner where it was always, it was a toxic narcissist relationship. But the real thing was, what was occurring is actually with these relationships, unbeknownst, let's say, to a genuine human feminine soul, unbeknownst to her, things were arranged that one of these soulless minions would come in just for that purpose, to keep her disempowered and in states of fear. But just backing up from that again, what we see is the byproduct of the narcissist from the entire system, because the system at its core is designed to create these stereotypes, if you will, that keep generating out into the reality misery, suffering, and are also there to generate conflict and animosity within others. And this is part of, with this ascension and one's spiritual growth, at them rising to a place of wise love, that they're consciously able to see this.
It's there's a lot of, let's say, uplifting outcomes of the seeing of this. Now, the experience of it allows you to see it. The labeling of it doesn't. It obfuscates it in so much more. But the experience of lack and control mechanisms and manipulation is being experienced by most, if not all, to whatever degree it is they need to see it. The interesting thing about the conversation yesterday, where I went into the word narcissism with the brother, because I knew he had a concept of what it meant. Now, it doesn't mean that I was reifying the word. What it was the concept. So he had a picture and an image of narcissism. And I took him through the lack process of the one that was the controller, and the lack process of the one that was the receiver. The minimizing of the other, the chaos it causes, but the chaos is represented to the chaos from the individual. And I'm calling these ones with souls. I'm not talking about the minions that are there to do it on purpose. These ones are playing out their own things. Now, in representing it in that way so he could see what narcissism is, I turned it around to the system and said, can you represent it there? And in this, it allowed him to see the behaviors were not acceptable. Now, he was 33, or he is 33, and he said his age group is more non-acceptant and intolerant of that behavior. Yes, because you can now see it. Before, you didn't know what it was. The collective consciousness did not know what it was. It was more, that's just normal. Now it's got to the stage where, no, that is intolerable. So the opposite effect, the higher, the wiser, is reconciling, is replacing it. And in that non-acceptance of that, within and without, to whatever degree, it ceases to exist. So what we're talking to is this, going back through, and a return to grace is the ceasing to exist of that which is not in grace. And each, therefore, is going through the seeing of it to say no. Now, in this process, what people are doing is, if they have blame, shame, or judgment within them, i.e. a lack, they will create that outside of themselves. They will say, this was wrong and this did this to me. It didn't do it to you, it did it for you. But you blame it. You put a negative value attached. You attach your own energetic value to it negatively. It owes you. And it's a debt creation. It's a judgment form. And you don't get reconciled until you get your payback. You feel you are entitled to something. But this is a negatively charged attribute that you've created from yourself of blame. Now, this blame can't stand because there is no blame. There is only forgiveness and no more. So on the inside, it's what's basically happening at this point is that which is intolerable is let me say it this way. The meaning of the word suffering is to tolerate that which is intolerable. It doesn't mean pain. It just means to go through that which is intolerable. Some people call it endurance, but it's actually suffering. It's the base word for suffering. Tolerate that which is intolerable. That's what the human collective has been doing to these base frequencies for such a long time that they've believed them to be true. And some still have the remnants of blame held there. This must be released, and that which is intolerable no longer suffered. This is the method of return to grace. This is the retrieval of energy, placing the value back into that energy which is yours, neutral to positive or benevolent, whichever, but never negative and low. Any aspersion of blame, any cast of blame creates a debt to the external. And this is not true. This is a justification in the mind of a reason why it owes you. It's your energy. Bring it back. And in this release is what we're seeing now. There's resistance and there's heaviness and there's all of these things that are ongoing. But it doesn't matter. This ultimately is all gone. And once it ceases to exist, it's no longer suffered. It's no longer even a consideration of the mind that that's what's happening. It's just gone. And this is the process.
Yeah, and this is what we're doing. So we're on our way now, rising back into the grace. But with many, yet they're still descending almost at the bottom. And part of this dissension involved, as you were saying, being robbed of their value, unbeknownst to them. Everything just being stripped bare to the bone, where there is no worth nor value left in the reality that was out there. The survival instinct, even with that, it made it very difficult. So divinely, everyone has been, to that degree, stripped of their value, what I'm saying, in order to cause, in effect, the change with the ascension, with the rise into the individual's value again. But it is a lengthy, so far, an integral process to do that.
The interesting aspect to a lot of the higher teachings is they talk about frequency. And I'm going to call frequency information. I'm going to say that the higher the frequency, the more information, the more comprehension, the more options and the more perspectives ones have. In the loss of value is the loss of frequency and the loss of information, i.e. solitude and despair. The despair is a very hard, very strong driver. It doesn't need a blame or anger. It can be utilized very, very benevolently through the heart and through the higher functions. But the despair is the driver. So in the loss of frequency and the loss of options, it's the loss of information, the loss of light, the loss of connection, the loss of source, the loss of self. And this is just what's being, this can't continue. It's the regain or the redemption or the remembering of self, which is where we're going. And in that remembering comes a release of concepts, beliefs, and all of the other things which cause the loss. The holding on to the belief as if it's real is an anchor, and that must be released, as is the debt and the and it's been robbed. No, it's not. It's still there. It's always been yours. All you need to do is reclaim it and remember what you are, not what you think you are or what you've been told you are. You are divine, eternal, and infinite. You are much more. You are much more than you believe yourself to be. But do you remember that? And in that remembering comes your value. But this does take action, and this takes action from morality and virtuous places, and not from where you were, not from where you believe you should take action. Although that is the driver, that can be the driver. The debt owed gives you the impetus, but the release of the debt gives you the grace. So we're talking to, you know, an ongoing complex situation and trying to make it simple, but it's not simple in action, but it is in what is happening, is undeniable, inevitable, and unstoppable. It's with grace or without, i.e. grace or disgrace, and the paths lead the same way. We're just talking about this openly.
Yeah, you know, pretty much we cannot, with the dissension, go any lower. The identity of the individual has been pillaged, you know, that even their moral values in many don't exist anymore. They're just operating on a robotic, routine schedule, being the perfect slave for the system, if you will. And, you know, where they've been programmed out of their morality, this is what I find a challenging task as being, let's say, an Ascension teacher, at even getting that message out, because they've been robbed so much out of that morality that they consciously don't even know. And if you're to tell them that, it doesn't register even with them. So, you know, and what I need to say, it is still occurring because this ascension is ascertained, and that is the good news with it. But what I'm sharing is how tedious it is, you know, with many that I've assisted, using through my own experience, but also seeing the regression at times, and you know, just saying, how could they regress once they know this much? And you know, it appeared, yes, it was consciously, it was there superficial, but it appeared to be embodied. And but then you come to find where it's not, like they regress and it's taken back out. So, you know, this is a very interesting thing with it. And, you know, what I'm told by Father is you be persistent, and we do persevere, and it is a process. But it's amazing how how they can regress sometimes so quickly and rebound back, you know, so quickly as well. But there is that interference, Lee, and that's where the frequencies come in that does this, you know, with a negated mind and negated consciousness, but also the brainwashing and the influencing by the subtle lower frequencies that ones are unbeknownst to what they're coming into actual contact with.
Yeah, I totally agree. I can represent the loss of information as a loss of frequency, and I can represent it very simply with.
I love to hear that. Yeah.
Only, you know, I'm going to say the way I've been representing it to give a picture to others lately is 3 circles on top of each other, 1, 2, 3, and a larger circle around the outside. So a larger circle with 3 circles on top. The bottom circle is the root chakra for some, or the core driver, or creational energy. It's your source of energy. It's your energy supply. It's infinite, but it's your source of energy. The middle circle is your heart, and the upper circle is the consciousness. Now, we could look at the heart as being feminine and the masculine consciousness, but I don't wish to do these things or put difficulty within this. Just leave this conceptual and let it play. So the base frequency, the base driver, the core, inside the methodology of the way that we've survived this is the pride and the ego, the representation of an individual as opposed to a unity. So required in many aspects was the other things going on, was a little bit of defensiveness. You had to survive in this, which required defense, which means to create justification to the external world, and all of these things. These are old concepts. Now, what I'd like to talk about is just the base drive, the energy that you wish to employ. Now, the energy that you're going to use is either through the heart or bypasses the heart. So it can go round the outside to the mind, or it can go directly straight up to the mind, from the bottom circle through the heart to the mind, or around the outside. If it goes around the outside, it needs to justify itself as coming from the heart. It needs to be believable. It needs to be justified. It needs to represent itself as the truth. If it comes with a blame, then it's somebody else's fault. And therefore, the mind will create a story of reason why it's their fault. Because it hasn't gone through the heart, there is no virtue involved in it. There is a loss of frequency. There is a believed storyline. At this point, there is no option. That is what happened. This is a creation, it's a figment, it's a manipulation of reality to justify your internal angst. The blame has to be accepted. It has to be created. There has to be a reason outside of you why you feel this way. Now, when the energy is fired through the heart, there is no disturbance. So there is no blame. There's just acceptance and there's love. There's all of the higher virtues and all of the higher knowing comes in, and you can see different perspectives. But when the energy fires through an angry place or a place of shame or a place of lack, then it has to represent itself as real, and that's where the stories and the fictitious creations come in, and negative value then is attached to the outside. This I call the deceiver. You can call it what you will, but it's a deception, and it creates manipulation of the reality and a manipulation of the other to accept your version of reality. And there's the blame, and this is an externalized mechanism of value creation or loss and return. Now, it doesn't matter if the other accepts blame or not. That just justifies the reason, and the reason remains hidden. But this is an externalized loss of value, and ultimately what's happening right now, the heart is the central, the heart is becoming more active. The ones that are trying to bypass, the deceivers that are trying to manipulate the emotional content of each vessel, are being seen. The time for deception is over. The heart is expanding until there is no more room for any negative to be held within that vessel. Absolutely. So the negatives that are being held are representing themselves as fake realities, and the belief systems in them are falling apart as only benevolent and neutral and upwards energies and perspectives remain, and more information is delivered to humanity. The higher the frequency, the more the light. So a deceiver, the negative energy, the negative shame, blame, lack, whatever it is, doesn't matter. The deceiver causes the loss of information. It can't exist. You can't believe a lie when you see the lie, so you mustn't be able to see it. You call it the fog of anger. The veil is called down. So you lose all of that, because this must be true. And this is the experience that's happening to everybody on different levels. It's a mechanical. I call it a mechanical. It's the same experience, experienced differently. It's the loss of value through blame, attachment to a negative within your own field, and this is ceasing to exist on this plane. So we are witnessing the retrieval of value, the energetic return to the heart, to the purity, to the benevolence, to the grace, to the morality and virtue, until it is impossible to conceive of acting from a place not of that. And that's where humanity are going. You know, again, sorry for the long missive, brother, but that's just orating those thoughts as they come in.
No, perfect. Yeah, once you're going in that channeled divine flow, we don't stop. It's beautiful. Yeah, yeah. So I wrote down, but I forget why, the humbled ego, because you began to touch on, and that's attached to.
Yeah. Okay. So the representation of the ego, the way ones can see how the actions, there's two paths one can take, is negative or positive. It's believe the deceiver or not. I am God, I am not. I am more, I am less. It's this central path. And the kicker to this is pride. Now, the ego must be proven to be right. It can't be wrong. And therefore, there's no acceptance of other information. There's only the this information, because this is what justified the anger, or this is what justified the survival, or this is what justifies why it's there, is this is why I am angry. So this is prideful, and it must be recognized by the other. Now, pride starts with negotiation. Can you not see it my way? Can you not agree that this is what you did? In many, many ways, it comes out that way. And then if that's not agreed upon, then pride descends to anger and control and fear-based mechanisms to get them to see, which is exactly what we can see in the system outside worldwide, the fear-based control mechanisms, because nobody would agree to that. So it must be done through fear. So the kicker is pride. And as soon as pride happens, you're right, they're wrong. There's the justification. And this is the lower ego. Now, that produces a weak masculine output. The mind creates all sorts of stories as to why you need to protect and projects them externally. And in doing so, it closes down the heart space. It tells the heart, you need protecting. I've got you. But it's from a place of anger and fight, not of benevolence and equality. It's from a place of no options because pridefully it needs to be there. So pride is the kicker that descends people into the lower forms of fear, control, blame, shame, guilt. The opposite of that is the courage to accept self-accountability. There's nothing outside of the self that can cause you to do anything. It's only within that it can happen. So everything is individual. Everything is done by you. Nothing can be done to you.
Now you've entered the divine ego, what I call rising above that humility.
Yes. So the pride, once the pride kicks in, you drop. When you drop, can you catch it? Very difficult to. But the opposite of that drop is the acceptance that it was you, is the self-accountability, is the self.
Take the ownership of it. Yeah. It began within you. Yeah.
Yes. Accountability, responsibility, it's yours. You're trying to manipulate the outside world to agree that they did this to you. That's not the case. No, that can't be the case. No, it wasn't. That's not how it happened. However you take ownership of that situation is your choice. But it takes courage. And this is the beginning of the morality, is the courage of self-acceptance and self-responsibility, not prideful descent into blame, but courage to accept responsibility and then look to make amends. And this is atonement. You atone for what's happening. You look for the common ground. You forgive yourself, release the other, and then make amends. However that is, give them a cuddle. Doesn't matter. Walk away whistling. It doesn't matter. But you don't maintain the pride. You go into the courage, which then hits acceptance, forgiveness, compassion, empathy, and all of the higher things.
Your redemption process.
To go into courage, you have to go undergo a humbling. The humbling is the release of the pride, the letting go of the ego, the mind saying, this isn't right. The higher aspects of the masculine releasing the need to protect and taking ownership and accountability. This is a humbling because you have to swallow your pride. You have to then become vulnerable. If you do not go through that process of accountability, it will be stored within your field as a negative and it will come back later. You will have to do it sooner or later. You will have to neutralize that frequency sooner or later. And that will take accountability. It will take humbling, and it will take a swallowing of your pride and making amends for your actions. The longer you let it pass, the deeper you go into anger, the further you continue it from the point of pride, the more you will humble yourself later. I was asked yesterday about, has anybody on this planet ever been served justice? And my reply is, you're looking at one. Excuse me, my tears. I served myself justice so many times. I have ensured that I have served and made humble all of those things. Nobody can give you justice except you. And that is your humbling. And it is as much as you want to take in as any moment, but the quicker you release that pride into courage, the quicker you humble yourself, you become forgiveness, you become love, you become higher frequency, the quicker you remain in virtue.
I believe we got to add in here because this is a very important ingredient or constituent of the process. And for once to know that as you raise higher in your empowerment, that truth changes. So each one, if you're just beginning, you need to know this, that truth is not constant. As you raise in your consciousness to different levels, your perspective as well begins to change, which gives you new levels of insights and truths that you did not know existed before. So this is to, what I'm saying is to let you know that the doors are always opening when you're doing, what Lee is sharing here as well, to keep opening those doorways to the higher wisdom and the higher truth. And it is like a game. It's like a video game. You keep advancing to the levels, but the beauty of it is that you do win the game. We do win, and we're getting close to having it won in this reality.
the, when there's superficiality inside a lot of this too. Again, I'm not harping on about the shame levels of this, because the other side of that is the virtuous, and they represent each other opposites. The power that one gains, the authority, the self that is embodied from the other side of this is so great that it does warrant a little bit of looking into. But it's not negative. It brings such a beautiful benevolence at the end of it. The catching that I don't get angry anymore doesn't mean to say that the system to which you got angry with isn't still operating, but without the anger or the representation that you have of anger. Just because you're not acting in a certain way that you were prior, the symptom of the anger repeats at higher levels. They're still there, but it's not as deep. So ones may feel that they've got past the anger and that they're not in fear anymore, but that's not true. That's another, what Rick was just saying about levels of truth, right? Well, you've got rid of a phase of that, but the ripples of that are evident in other ways. So objectifying an outcome, let's say, in a way of speaking, that your mind's come up with, I would like to do this. Now, there's no reason for another to be involved, but now you're going to try to manipulate the situation so the other agrees to it. This has an objectified outcome, which means that you will now manipulate and misrepresent reality for the other to agree. They don't know that you've got that concept, but you're going to play it out. Now, the same mechanic of that manipulation to an outcome is one of an expected outcome. There's one where you have an expectation, and with that expectation maybe not coming to fruition, there may be a feeling of anger or ode or ungraciousness or ingratitude or resentment. I didn't get what I wanted. The same mechanic happens when you get angry as it does when you need an outcome. The manipulation of reality and the changing of these things. Now, this is initially you go through the anger stages, but then you rise, and these things are basically, a lot of these are missed, the subtleties to this. So that for the higher ones that have already got through the anger phases, have a look for the way that the method that you manipulated reality to an outcome and the resentment to the other if you don't get that outcome may happen, but without the anger. It's still stored negatively. The same method of that negative creation, but it's not as deep, but it still can't be held on to. So all of these outcomes, they're subtle. They can be in your wording. They can be in like a ripple. The outer ripples, it's not as heavy, but the method that it comes across is still playing out. And ones can find themselves more aware of this and see it for themselves. And this allows for such much quicker recognition. You recognize it, you recognize your mind, and then the mind doesn't fall for it anymore, and it's harmonizing. All of this is harmonizing those frequencies so that they don't come back up. Doesn't happen anymore, and when they're gone, you don't even know that you missed them. So again, we can go into many levels of this, and I don't wish to spend this, but it's the method to which it plays out gives insight into its layer, is it still require something to be done for you or given to you, or do you still, or not? Are you purely, truly self-accountable? Have you your faith in what you truly are, and nothing from outside is required? And then it just changes, brother. Again, I'm just trying to go through it for others that may recognize what it is that I just said.
I believe so. Yeah, yeah. Many did. So we're speaking about the individual's identity being robbed, taken from them. Their value. It's all the same. It's all interconnected, but also hidden from them much higher truths that at this time many are going back into. Um, with this, I was going to, I wanted to just change the script a little bit, if you will. And it kept jumping out at me here. What I wish to say is that, what we see, or what I've witnessed in the last 10 or 15 years, more home births of children. Now, with these home births of children as well, they're not in hospitals, so they're also not registered, some of them at least. And when I look at this, these children are actually free. They're not born slaves. They're not registered into the system. So how beautiful and how powerful is that, to have in the world a free ones instead of slaves? I'm no longer a slave, and you're not, but if you will, this physical vessel was born a slave into the system. But having said this, the system would not exist if we were not here. So this actually means we are a shareholder and owner into that system as well. And just quickly with that, with GPMS, we're replacing, if you will, your words, the CEOs and the executive of that old system, and we are putting the bona fide, genuine people in that replaces the old. But it's beautiful to see, just getting back to this, it's beautiful to see the free children being born that are not given a number on their name, if you will. What's your thoughts?
And they'll never be subject. No, I love it. They'll never be subject to the old way. I've looked at the two generations, one generation down the road, and would they look back at this time and think, how did they survive? They were Neanderthals. The freedom that they will experience, they'll never understand the slavery or the chattel properties, the deceptions and the deceits and the loss of value. It would be inconceivable for ones to have ever existed through that. And I looked at that as beautiful. And this is what we're witnessing, I believe, is the precursor to that. None of this ever happened to those minds then. They couldn't even conceive of this, because they'll know so much more. They will only ever have known freedom and benevolence, and all of that's gone. Innocence, but innocence in the pure sense, not judgmental. Not because they don't know anything. They do. They know a lot. It's because they don't know that. Negative.
Also, yeah, they're not conditioned and put into the public school systems, if you will. So, the homeschooled element allows for the child to fully unlock their own ingenuity and innovation. And this is why you also have so many geniuses with these type of children that are at least homeschooled. If they are not fully free of the system, it doesn't matter, because what it does, it indicates the problem with the public school system, the indoctrination in the conditioning. And just last evening, we had a Zoom meeting with the GPMS Canada group, and I brought in there were children, I believe now, as young as 2 years old, going to a kindergarten in a daycare or what have you, while both parents are out working in the US, chasing that false American dream. But you look at the family unit, there's no more a family unit. It's more so like a robotic construct that really it's been robbed and manipulated of all of the value of the love, the bonding, and the compassion. And ones with, let's say, the teenagers and what have you, and when you have the older ones complaining about their actions, look at the cause of it. And again, every time you go to the system as being the root cause of all of these distortions.
The fascinating thing that, and I don't speak to this all observationally. I speak to this very much experientially. The fascinating thing is the getting entangled in the symptom, not the cause. So many people enjoy, and I know I used to as well, cajoling the symptoms as if they're important, and trying to fix a symptom because the cause is unknown. And of course, with the system as it stands and the obfuscations and the coercion into loss of value, is the removal of information. The deceiver. The last thing that is wanted by the magician is you to see how it happened. They just want you to be wowed by the effect. So the cause is always hidden. The information to see the cause is out of societal talk, conspiracy theory, madman, crazy, whatever. All of these things are put in. So the cause is obfuscated and the symptom is what's the people get tangled in. We can fix this and we can do that. No, you can't, because you're not stopping the cause. It's just going to return in a different way. I think more and more now are able to see past the symptom. They're putting the pictures together. It can't just be this, and this. It must be something else that's causing this, and this. So they're seeing through the lies and the veil. They're seeing to a cause. In general terms, that cause generally seems too much. I can only deal with the symptom. The cause is too great. At this point, the cause is the only thing to be dealt with. None of the symptoms matter. And in everybody's way, that's what they are doing. They are seeing to the cause. The problem is the cause creates fear. The cause creates a big complexity. It's causing authority. It's causing this. We can't do anything about that. That's always been, but that's not true. The cause is being seen. And in what we're talking about here with GPMS, the cause is the system. It's not that we're going to blame the system. We're going to see it for what it is. We're going to speak the truth about it. We're going to not accept that which is non-virtuous, and we're going to replace the non-virtuous with the virtuous. And that is as simple as it needs to be. There's no blame. There's no guilt. There's no judgment. There's no anger. There is simply, that is no good anymore. That is causing this. No more.
Yeah, and we're not going to waste time on that.
Sorry. No.
We're not going to waste time looking for blame and accountability and all of these things within a system that does not have the mechanism to provide the morality as a whole. So we drop the whole old system and we replace it. So we begin with a blank slate and we put everything good onto it. And this is what GPMS is for the new world.
I wouldn't argue with you, brother, you know that, but I would argue the word, it doesn't have the mechanics with it to provide. It doesn't have the intention within it. The mechanics there is we can make this system benevolent to all. It doesn't need addition. It just needs a change of intention. Its intention was not to provide. Its intention was to devalue. That's the cause. We don't want that. Nobody wants that. Everybody wants to add value, not devalue. So there's the cause. Let's add value to the system that doesn't want to add it. If it doesn't want to, let's change the leadership.
Yeah.
Or the ownership or the guardianship.
Yeah. We're taking control of the system is what's occurring. Yeah. So you're correct. And we're doing the right moral, virtuous things with it for all worldwide. So But fundamentally, out of what I like to say, out of the old system, we're taking the ownership of the internet and the financial routing system, because these two mainstays can provide everything that a society needs to advance very quickly forward into the morality. Money, can be used good, and we're going to use it as the ultimate full good tool, but not in a capitalistic way. There is no profit or loss. It's egalitarian. It's equal, with everyone in a place of comfort, and again, eradicating poverty worldwide. Like, it's insane when money is just fabricated out of thin air, that you have it's over 30,000 a day that are dying worldwide because of poverty. So those numbers are very high now, and they're going higher and higher. And that is so savage. And this is what we stop instantly with GPMS once the majority of the world agrees with it. So, I put out a post the other day, Lee, saying, to ones, what would you do if you won the lifetime lottery, if you will? And then I put below that, in that same thing, that, well, GPMS is doing this for all. And it's doing more than that. I mean, look at it. Never again will anyone have to worry or stress about money. There will be no stress in this new world, and there's more than enough for everyone. So we're just flipping the tables on the use of money. The old control of money was actually, it's about energy to generate animosity, and with their legal fiction system as well, to dissuade and control and disempower one. So we throw all that away, and we have the opposite mechanisms here. So we're using money as a good tool, but it's only going to be temporary, and what humanity will come to find very quickly, they don't need money at all, and it becomes obsolete, because it is absolute nonsense. But we're having such a tedious job now getting the choice of GPMS to ones realizing their value. So it is a transitional process to that respect.
It's all linked. There's two things I'd like to put these two things in. One was about calling something savage and barbaric from an observational perspective, from wiser love. It doesn't take away the nobility of actions within that. It just takes all. So the way I described this the other day was, maybe some people would have heard of gout, and I experienced gout many years ago, and the pain gout caused. And in historical data, there was people having their limbs chopped off because they have gout. Now, at a point of level, point of knowledge, gout can be treated. It's not something that's there forever, but it's extremely painful. But at that time of knowledge, they didn't know that, so it was easier to cut the limb off. Now, the doctor or the surgeon or whoever it was that cut the limb off wasn't savage. That was very noble. It was very honest. It was moral. It carried virtue. They were trying to alleviate the pain and the suffering of the individual by cutting off a limb. 200 years later, the action of doing that is deemed savage. But the morality involved in the one doing it, with the knowing that they had, isn't in question. So we can look at perspective with this, and we can put nobility and some virtue and some things into, but without giving that due from up here. The action, the knowledge, and all of these things come in. Now, I just wanted to add that, but the secondary, go on.
Yeah, this is a very important example what you put up. Yes, ignorance, at the time, what was morally what they thought was the most moral thing to do to alleviate the pain by the amputating the limb, if you will, at that time. But also it's because they were ignorant, as you're saying, to another solution. But when we use this same analogy now with GPMS, there is no excuse once GPMS is given to the world that you've got to do what is morally right. And it is here now, and it's not a falsity, it's not a fiction, it's not a it's real and it's true and it's simply happening.
No,
And with this, anyone that has any morals still left within them, they are morally obligated to become part of this very quickly and help change the world.
no, I'd like to, yeah, perfect. And I'd like to just add, Janae Hope just put in doing the best they can with the information at the time, which is true. Now, if you have then been given information, let's say as a doctor at that time, you were told if you feed them strawberries, that gout will go. And your medical practitioner next to you said, do not feed them strawberries, cut them feet off. And you kept cutting feet off. You've lost your morality. You've lost your morality through fear.
Credibility is gone. Yeah.
So once information is received, if you allow fear to take over the mind of what that may mean, or to justify not doing it because of perceived judgment or self-effects of these things, then the morality and the virtue is gone. And this is what you're just talking to with GPMS. Once the information has been provided of this, and if you wish then to maintain the system, knowing more, but through fear-based actions, not acting upon them, then it's not virtuous. It simply isn't. There is no grey area of in-betweens. There is or there isn't. You can create grey areas if you wish, but you will eventually return the justice for that, and you will absorb it, and you will remove your pride, and you will have the courage to accept what it is that you chose to do. It doesn't matter about how the other sees or how cunning you feel you are. As soon as that fear-based action has been employed and acted upon, you will then have to return it eventually. And this is the yin-yang, this is the cause and effect. So we can reference point this from a lot of different perspectives, but the change of information is the point of pride or courage. When new information is received, pride is fear-based, courage isn't. One is virtuous, one isn't. One will be repaid back with a humbling, one will receive gifts later. And this is, I wish everybody, whichever path they choose, I know where they're going. Simplify it into this moral, immoral. And you can't act morally from a place of fear. It just can't be done. So we can make it quite easy, but that's not denying everybody's reality and everybody's experiences. You will choose the best way for you via the soul, and if that goes down a fear-based route until you release it, then so be it. There's no judgment of that.
Yeah,
but it is what it is.
Let's realistically look at some numbers. I like to do this. Worldwide, okay, so right now at this time we have just over 65,000 members of GPMS, children, women, and men. And let's say this is within their heart that they know it. And there is the morality with it, to do what is right. The courage is there within many that, going through their trials and errors at even trying to correct an old system, it didn't work. So they're now with us, knowing that this is the last resort and the only way for humanity. But having said this, when you look out there in the environment, with the Ascension groups and truthers, if you will, if you look at the amount of people that had enough courage to stand up worldwide over the last several years in protests, where are all these people? Here is the solution. And we've given it to many of these leaders, but what was interesting is they violently rejected us or didn't even pay attention. And, with these leaders, they're very, what you would call, intelligent leaders, some of these, and they would not be a leader if they didn't have a certain degree of intelligence, knew what they were speaking about. So, with that, ignorance is not an excuse for these ones not to let the people that were following them to know about GPMS.
But fear-based, ignorance is no excuse, but fear-based um, manifestation of reality or creations of reality is very real. A lot of these leaders are self-serving. They have a position that they feel they are in of authority because they need to be important outside because they lack importance inside. It's coming from a place of lack. They may be full of information and full of intelligence and these ideas, but if there's still got a lack within them, they still require followers. And therefore, they can hold. See, what I will openly talk to a few of the leaders that I've met that when realizing GPMS have not given it to their followers because they are no longer the leader in GPMS. They feel they haven't got the position of authority they have within their structures. When they find out that everybody within GPMS is equal, they refuse GPMS because they feel they are lessened by that. I had a message from somebody today. Let me just read it out to you. I'm not going to give any names, but may I request, this is sent to GPMS, may I request a list of members under my leadership? What? These ones, it's coming from a place of such self-lack that they need others to give them importance. So it's self-serving leadership, even though it might seem benevolent, they may seem brilliant, but they must do that to create the control mechanisms, and they must manipulate the external world so they have the followers. So they will reject GPMS.
And nobody owns another, and that is low, very low consciousness with that. It's
one way of the leaders. We've spoken to others, brother. We've spoken to other leaders who are in tears with us on the calls. The first time we've met them, they have realized GPMS and they've felt the comfort of the bond of the brotherhood's coming back. They felt all this, and the very next day, they've created all sorts of reasons why they can't be around us anymore. This is, we know it's divine rejection. We know that they're having to do their things, but it's not one or two. This is prevalent. So people those ones that need followers, followers don't follow leaders. Followers respect, leaders don't command followers. Truly, they don't command followers. Ones follow ones who aren't leaders. They don't want to be leaders. They want to make everybody a leader, so there are no leaders. But the ones that need followers and the ones that maintain a fellowship do need a place of importance above others. And true leaders aren't above anybody. So we are where we are, brother.
Yeah. And going through the process. And, part of this process is we have identified what you would call authentic, controlled opposition, but nevertheless, we don't need to get into that. It was part of the process, at identifying what other contributing factors are out there that is actually against the freedom of humanity. And it was very amazing when you go into what I call these false narratives as well, where these leaders are part of the big problem because they're controlled opposition, conveniently placed by the darkness in there, to at least keep ones in places of a codependency, thinking that someone else is doing it for them. And they've kept them there for decades in some of these false narratives. And it's interesting how they've been fooled and tricked thousands, perhaps even tens of thousands of times, and still they keep believing.
Well, one of the things that these others, please don't call them leaders, words of power. I don't disagree, brother. But it's more for this is for a collective I know. Please don't call them leaders. They're not. They're in positions that they self-denote as this. They aren't. So one of the mechanisms of that is keeping people dumb, keeping people waiting for something, making things complicated so that others don't think they understand them, but acting as if they do. stringing people along, missing dates, predicting things, and then with impunity saying, well, I didn't tell you that. Gaslighting, manipulation, never a solution, never an easy way out, always complication, always difficult, always come back next week, always continuation. This is manipulation, and this is what you would
At
call
that same
control.
time, I got to interrupt, Lee, because at that same time, they're doing all this, what you just said. At that same time, what are these manipulators doing on the outside? They're going full forward with, let's say, their agenda and their other plans. Well, they got all these other ones distracted on a false hope.
Yeah. So it's all based on false hope and false value and externalizing of value systems and seeking that which you don't have. It's all based on problem, not solution. The last thing they're going to give you is solution, because then you don't need them anymore.
What is GPMS.world? GPMS.world is not false hope, but how can you substantiate and accreditate that right now?
Hope actualized. Well, anybody that has gone or undergone a substantial or meaningful shift in reality. Some call it dark night of the soul. Some call it a return to grace. Some call it a rise, ascension. There are many people, enlightenment. They've got loads of these different names, and a lot of them are misrepresented. But they will have understood the feeling of enlightenment. What would I call GPMS? Exactly that. The enlightenment. It's not false. It's just inconceivable to those that haven't conceived of it. Once you do, it can be no other way. Once you realize morality, once you step out of your fears into the higher morality, you can never act from a place of lower. This is what GPMS is. But if you're coming from a place of lack, it's inconceivable. If you're coming from a place of knowing, it's all there ever can be. It's hope actualized, but it depends where you are in your journey as to what GPMS is. Out of reach, a pipe dream utopia it's the only way humanity are going to move forward, and it's inevitable.
I have to stop you right there, if I may, Lee. I mean, how much more common sense, but even to someone not awakened, can GPMS.world be? It's a simple worldwide vote, and once we have the majority vote, the majority wins. All of these ones that are awake or not, they know how, if you will, an election works. And this is a worldwide election. It's a referendum. And once the majority agrees with GPMS, it's all done. Now, it's very tangible. It's not an illusion. The actual numbers are there. One can see them growing. It's a lawful construct with all of it. And so it's very real. It's very tangible. And in your words, it's more than hope. It's hope being actualized, and it's being actualized by the actual numbers. So it's material. It's tangible with this. But having said that, the simplicity of what it is, just giving it to the people for a choice. What is the problem, they have with not seeing that they have this choice? And a lot of that is, when we began the show here, what we were speaking about, how the value was robbed unbeknownst to them, and how the individuals have been indoctrinated, conditioned, and disempowered by the actual system, and their identity robbed, that they don't even think they're worth winning the lifetime lottery, if you will.
Yes, it's the valueless nature and the hopelessness and the worthlessness. I'm not deserving of that, which negates this. False influences. Influences is a better word than leaders. With this, much better. They aren't leaders; they're influencers. They have people under their influence. Yes, much more refined. But I think everybody understands what it is we're talking to. The intention was not to give them power. Certainly the other way around. So that was the basic of the terms. There was an interesting one yesterday I listened to, brother, on the radio. It's a radio station in London, LBC, and it was a chat with the Prime Minister of the UK and Elon Musk. And they were reflecting on this chat. And in this chat, Musk had said something about AI. And his words on AI was, soon AI will do all the jobs, nobody will need to work. Now, the call was about, what does that mean? AI is going to take up all the jobs. Well, what's anybody going to do? When your parents say to you, what would you like to be when you grow up? What are you going to say if there's no work, if there's no jobs? How will you define yourself? I don't know what to think of this world. Again, symptom, not problem. The problem is the finance. This is about, well, we've got no work. How are we going to make money? But it extrapolates into, well, what are we going to do? How are we going to have careers? How will we justify living? It wasn't taken into the financial necessity. It was all, well, all of this is going to be gone. It's like, what are we going to do? AI is going to take our jobs. Why do people think they need to work? What's the cause of the work syndrome? You identify yourself by your job title. What the? And this is all based on financial need. Where's the financial need come from when there was none? There is the money is printed to infinity. It was never scarce. It was never valuable. It's given value by the belief systems of the people. And the ones with lots of it tell you how much it's worth, and you haven't got any. And you only then, your nobility or your title is based on how much you can earn in your job. And when the job is taken away from you, you're in fear. This whole indoctrination and belief system is based on the scarcity of money, and guess what? It never was. Who's in control of that may give you an idea as to the ideology of the system and the narcissistic viewpoints of that system and the control mechanisms and the illusion and mesmerization and influence under the people. The system is influential. The system is deceitful and is a magician. You need a job to earn. We're not going to have any jobs. What are we going to do? Well, how about you don't ever need to earn? What if you didn't have to earn and you had everything you needed? There was no financial incentive. There was just self-motivation. What would the job look like if you were self-motivated? If you just did it for self-satisfaction or to assist, help out some friends or help out the community? What would that job look like? Would you even call it a job? Or would you just say, I'm going to have some fun today. I'm going to go do what I enjoy. Do you need a job? What if you haven't got the financial incentive to have a job? None of this was in the conversation. It was all based on AI is going to take our work.
But
Fascinating.
I'm thinking about Jack in the UK with the children, with the experiment in the school, and the end result. Yeah. If you wish to share that, quickly, what the end result was very blissful and amazing for I loved it.
I think it was, again, very, very quickly, he'd gone into a school for a project. Somebody had commissioned him to ask the children what they wanted to be when they were older. And he was developing a picture of the child mind and their aspirations, let's say. Gave them a bit of paper, wrote down 2 or 3 things that you want to be on it. I think they were 8 to 10-year-old. They weren't later, about then, so maybe 10-year-old. So after 10 minutes, he walked around and had a little scan of the paper and saw these things like celebrities and pop stars and footballers. So said to the class, why would you like to be those things? Money, status. So he then turned the question around. He said, turn the paper over. I'm going to give you all $1 billion each, or you never have to worry about money again. What would you like to be? Marine biologists, veterinarians, assisting the elderly, helping animals. The change of perspective because of the financial removal, the financial necessity, was chalk and cheese. It was immoral tomorrow, simply because of the cause of the money. So you literally changed the outcome, the morality, the virtue, by removing the financial status. This is what GPMS does. This is part of what GPMS does. It's the return to value. It's the self-recognition. It's the worth returning, the intrinsic worth to each.
Determination of choice.
Yes, and it doesn't matter what level of consciousness they're at or what they believe in. Their value is returning, and that is God divinely given. It is ordained. This isn't something anybody can stop or take away from anybody. It's just something that people can resist. And that resistance is being stopped or slowing down. There is no resistance to it. It's yours. Take it back. But it does, take a humbling. It does take a drop of pride, a loss of what you don't want, a loss of the fears. That's all it But in losing the fears, it does take a bit of a humbling that you were carrying them. It does take honesty. GPMS requires honesty. This is why GPMS is built with absolute truth and transparency at its core, because that's how you are built, and that's how I am, and that's how everything is, pure. So the truth and transparency is there from the beginning, and that's what it requires of the people joining it. As each consents, they will go down a new path of release of their own fears. And this is divine. It's benevolent. The outcome is beautiful. The course of it is each choice. It's inevitable. And this is the harmonizer.
I don't know the exact number, but I'm hauling a figure out of the air of, let's say, 99% or perhaps even 99.9% of the souls upon the planet do not know that, let's say, in the present power regime upon the planet, they do not know that there's actual evil in there. What they think is these ones are just bad humans, but the real truth is no, they are much more than that, and they do have a nefarious agenda. They are the masters of deception and trickery that feed the false narratives with false info to steer their movie to keep people complacent, why they carry out a nefarious agenda that we've seen occurring more prominently in the last several years, recent years. But having said this, and this is one of the things that I would love. It would make things go so much quicker if the human souls could actually see that this power regime is actually evil, that they are not human what the people thinks they are. And but nevertheless, having said this, I do know the numbers are very, very small of the ones that actually know this. And what I need to say with this, with my connection with Father, straight connection, and I say I'm one with Father because yes, I am, and upon the planet to do a very important mission, and one is to liberate, assist with that with the rest of my brothers and sisters here, Lee, you included, to liberate the planet. But during the course of being briefed on the problems, I have been shown concretely and fully by Father the actual evil itself. So what I'm saying, it does exist. And ones need to realize that these are not just bad humans, but nevertheless, it's out there once again, because the choices have to be made. And I'm not saying this to frighten anyone, because there is no fear of this. And evidence of that is we would not even be here today having these discussions on all of your truther networks. You would not be having these discussions if there was anything to fear. The Great Awakening would not be occurring if there was anything to fear. But you need to know, that there is an actual evil upon the planet. And that has to change. Everyone is you're in your redemption process, which is doing your inner work, rising into your power. This is your redemption to assist and participate in contributing the new world and no longer being partisan and an accomplice to a evil slavery system.
Yeah, I totally. On the other side, you said there, I wish people could see that there was the evil, so they would recognize it. I wish ones could see their divinity and realize that they are so much more powerful than those that are dark.
Whatever it takes. Yes. Absolutely. I'd rather with what you're saying, but where we showing each one their moral responsibility, and still that's being rejected. So then there's times, I say, Father, okay, what
Sure.
does it take? You know, what do we got to do here with it? And Father, you
I
know,
put,
kind of a laughing, he said, you know, look at Jesus 2,000 years ago. He created miracles, and they ended up, you know, uh, falsifying his death, if you will. So it's and another one she just put on here about the Stockholm syndrome, and this ties into what I'm saying. Yeah, you know, they don't know that their captors are evil, and you know they love them and keep supporting the system. But this is also yeah, the divine comedy of it, because you have to advance the
we,
levels.
we spoke about, again, I'm just reflecting, brother, as we're talking. Michael and I spoke about this yesterday, and it was there was an interesting one with this. It was correlation to not seeing the evil, but seeing actions which represent evil. It wasn't denoting somebody as evil, pure evil. It was seeing representations of the actions that the one did as evil, and forgiving them for their actions. Now, in the not witnessing the intrinsic evil, the benefit of the doubt was there was light there, and therefore you could release them from blame, not accept their action, and not accept the evil, but release the one that was doing it, because it wasn't from a pure intent, it was from misguided areas. Now, this benevolence in forgiveness is the essence of what must be kept from the Stockholm syndrome. It's not that you need to forgive the evil or accept the evil, but the beauty to which you could see past the action to a benevolent outcome is the essence of what ones must keep. The rest of it, let it go. The ideology that there's always good in ones isn't a bad thing, but it's not true. And that's what Rick is enhancing here. There's not always good in ones. You can't always represent evil actions as just misguided nature. No, there were ones here that were doing it because that's all they can do. And this is the dark ones. So these have been around, but the beauty and the benevolence of the second grace, the second chance, the I see your actions, but they're not acceptable, but I honor your light. Take that essence with you, not the evil. As you said before, you cannot love the evil.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And you know, that's so important for ones to know in this time. If we're creating a new reality where evil doesn't exist, and if you're to love them and accept their behavior, then you're condoning them and inviting them into your new existence. And that is not divinely allowed. We're going to a place where evil doesn't exist. So, having said that, you know, again, I wish to say that don't forgive them, because they knew very well what they were doing. That was their intent. And to forgive that is to condone it and to allow it to be. So, in whatever way your process is, forgive yourself from being connected to them. So you separate from it, and then we move forward to the place where they don't exist, but they don't come along with it. And we don't need accountability for them. All we need to do, as we're doing, is keep uniting the genuine souls, and then this darkness fades out of existence. They cannot exist in a joyous, blissful environment where there is no misery, because these exist because there is misery. We're creating the world where there is no misery, and physics will not allow these to exist in that world. But they got to
That's
be
what
left
I'd like to add.
behind here. You cannot
That's what
bring
I'd like
them
to add.
into
Yeah.
the new. You cannot contaminate the new world with them. So we don't need to have justice with them. We don't need them to be accountable. That is taken care of in a godly way, if you will. It is the wrath of God that they activate themselves that keeps them behind why we rise into the different timelines.
The frequency of distortion the evil ones exist in is not the frequency that we will be in. It's not that they don't come there. It's not that they don't. It's that they don't exist there. There is no concept of them there. Requirement, need. It doesn't happen. It's not there. It just. This is one of the linear things that conscious minds struggle to understand. Is I spent best part of, let's say, 40 years angry. And when anger isn't there anymore, it's like,
now what are you going to do?
For 49 years, I believed anger was a prerequisite of life. And then it wasn't anymore. It's the same with evil. It's the same with these things. The same with all of the rest of this. When it's gone, it's gone. It's not experienced anymore. It's no longer required for experience. The concepts that it's continuous or is needed or it's part of life, they're fake. When they're not like there anymore, they're gone. So this is where, again, open-mindedness and you may have, I don't know, there's many experiences of this throughout the life where ones feel that this is the norm or a ritual or that's just life, and then it's gone. And they don't miss it. They don't miss it. It's no longer required. That's where humanity are going with regard to these dark ones. But you can represent the dark energies from them inside of the fears and lacks and all the rest of it, but that's all they contain. The soul, the light ones, are releasing those. So they're no longer unburdened by them. They're no longer anchored down by them. They just don't exist. You don't even think about them. You don't see it. You don't think about it.
So what are ones going to choose the light path, the moral path, and don't support the old? And with that, this is what GPMS is doing. It is the divine plan. It's been put upon the planet for the ascending souls, for the ascension timeline, to ascend humanity into at least civility out of the present nonsensical, non-acceptable savagery. With that, I'm going to, Lee, I believe I'm going to, we'll end this up. And if you're open to it, Lee, we'll do a GPMS specific perhaps the next time if you want.
Of course, my friend. I knew we were going down a different route with this one slightly.
Yeah.
The last few days, the last couple of the collective time for this one. So we'll see what this one does. Yeah, we can go straight into GPMS and reasons without the. We can still talk to some of the virtues and honors, and value systems, but in a more constructive GPMS way.
Yeah, with all the positive, we got all of the distortion and messiness out with this one, if you will, for the most part. Well, okay. Actually, just a general introduction to it, but we went pretty deep with it, so we covered, very good. But yeah, let's do that, and
let's see what questions come in next time, so we can meander. But let's base it on the premise of it's more about GPMS than the other side.
Yeah, but it's
I like to open-ended, brother.
Everything is intertwined and connected, and we, had to do, let's say, a precursor, if you will, to that. And
well, we had to do a catch-up over the. Let's say, well, one of the ways I would phrase what we've done this evening or this afternoon for you, whatever, is a catch-up of the collective consciousness over the last period of time. Yeah. What's been evidenced, and that's what's been put through this. And this is why this was, a divine culmination of that. Now we will continue. So looking forward to it, brother. Looking forward to it, whenever that may be.
Right on. All right. Having said that, love, light, and gratitude, brother, and thank all of you for watching and share this video worldwide. We're all about transparency and sharing it. Yeah.
Love, light to all. Love you all, guys. Keep going. Onwards and upwards.
All right, I'll finish this up, and have a beautiful day, everyone.